their technical error, and he's in.
Can I say, as councillor?
Okay, Chairman.
You're muted, Dudley.
As Councillor Jones is trying to get in through IT, he's indicated he wants to be in. Obviously, can we not give him a moment or so they can get him in?
Can he dial in the meantime, please?
Oh, can you ask him to do that, please?
I have.
We are live, people.
It's important that he is
Yeah.
here to hear the whole debate and not just part of it. So I think so
you can't vote or get involved if he's not here to start from the start.
That's right. That's what they're concerned
I
about.
would propose, Chairman, that we have a short break to allow Councillor Jones to access the meeting.
Well, I don't think we need a short break because we haven't actually started yet, have we?
Well, formally we have actually, Chairman.
Has it?
So we were told.
Yes,
Are we live then?
Yes, Chairman, the meeting is live.
Thank you. Right, welcome everybody.
So therefore, Chairman, I propose that we take a short pause to allow Councillor Jones to access the meeting.
Yeah, and I'm happy to second that, Chairman, on the basis that Councillor Jones has logged in, just it would appear into the wrong meeting.
Is our legal okay with that?
Yes.
Patricia, is that okay if we have a break before we start?
Members should vote on it, really, if you've got.
Yes. Okay, so we've had a proposal and we've had a seconder. All those in favour?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone against? Any abstentions?
Chair,
Yeah,
how long for members of the public are you proposing?
5 minutes.
Do you need 5 minutes? Does he need 5 minutes, does he? We'll make it 5 minutes because that's an easy number. So we'll start again at 1940.
I don't like to move. Did you hang up on him?
1840.
Surely
Chair.
1840.
Yes.
1840 if you like. It's a good year, that. So does that mean we're closed?
Chairman, you muted yourself then.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I wonder how that happened. So are we live now or are we turned off?
We're still live, Chairman. Once we've gone live, I can't stop the meeting.
So we're still live and we can be heard by everyone.
Yes.
Yeah. So,
Okay,
yeah.
we'll wait in silence then, won't we?
Yes, please.
Chairman, somebody has just appeared in the lobby.
I will let them in and
Councillor Jones, are you with us?
Ben, is there anyone in your lobby? I can't see anyone there now.
No, I've let them in.
Yes,
Is that you, Councillor Jones?
yes, it is. Yeah,
Okay, thank you very much.
thanks.
Okay, Chairman, I shall send you live on the screen and you can recommence the meeting.
Thank you.
So are we ready to go again then?
We are, yes.
Right. After one false start, we'll go again. Now we are as complete as we can be. So welcome to the planning meeting 16th of December. The last one, I think, of this year. So we'll make it a good one, shall we? So straight to the agenda. And the first item, apologies, please, Charlie.
Thank you, Chairman. We've received apologies from councillors Roger Glitherow and also from Barbara Jenny.
Thank you. Declarations of interest and then informal site visits. Do we have any declarations of interest? I don't see any. No. And who's visited the site informally? No one? Okay. Do we have any questions? Sorry, what was that?
Sorry, I couldn't get myself off mute. I wanted to know whether, because I've received an email from the town council about this application, whether I need to declare that I've received it.
No, you have to declare that it doesn't mean anything to you and you'll make your decisions based upon what you hear from now on.
Yeah, exactly.
Will you declare that?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay,
please.
we'll take that as a declaration then.
Thank you.
Right, on to item 3 of the agenda. Do we have any questions, please?
No questions were received. Thank you, Chairman.
And item 4 is the actual agenda for the night. We only have one item on it, obviously, and Wayne is going to introduce that to us, aren't you?
Yes, thank you. What I'll do is I'll just give a brief sort of verbal update. I'll show some photographs of the site and then I'll go through the plans. So I'll do sort of a 3-stage presentation, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so you'll all be aware that there was a previous 2017 application for one B8 unit on roughly this site, which was refused. It was refused for 2 reasons. The first one was it did not include smaller units to allow a wider range of employment provision. And the second reason was it had an unacceptable visual and landscape impact and was overbearing on residential amenity. This application has been submitted as an attempt to overcome those 2 reasons for refusal. This time round it involves 4 employment units. 2 will be sited roughly on the footprint of the refused one, but will have a lower combined floor space. Excuse me. They will also be over 3.5 metres smaller in height. These units are located on land allocated in the Raunds Neighbourhood Plan for employment use. The other part of the proposal involves 2 smaller units aimed at providing a wider range of jobs that the previous one did not. They will be located on land between the A45 services and the B8 units. The conditions are proposed that no more than 80% of the whole development will be B8, and also that these units will have to be started before the others can be occupied, as a safeguard trying to get the smaller jobs. Overall, it's considered that the reason for refusal based on the previous lack of job provision has been overcome. In terms of visual impact, I think it's probably best if I'll show you the photos and the slides, and then I'll conclude what I've got to say. So just bear with me a second. Okay, so hopefully the slide shows on the screen now with a bit of luck. Yes?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I'll start with some photos. This is the view from the end of the access road at the moment, you know, roughly where the McDonald's is, looking into the site. So you can see the houses on the right hand side, to the south of the site, and then on the left hand side, just off the edge of the photo, is the A45. This is just me stepping onto the site further, so I'm just a bit closer to the houses. And this is me turning around through 180 degrees and looking back down the access road back towards the roundabout on the A45. So the entrance to McDonald's is on the right, and then there's a petrol station before you get to the roundabout. This is right at the other end of the housing site, and you'll be aware there's lots of discussion from the people that live in the houses about this play area and the effect that the development may or may not have on it. So this shows the play area. The application site is to the left of it, and you can just see the houses to the right. Again, this is coming back to the other end of the houses and looking along the closest houses to where these units will go. And one thing I want to draw your attention to is the closest houses are all gable end on. They have got some windows facing the sites, but most of the main windows of the houses face in different directions to the actual development. This is just the other end looking back the same way. So this is the application we've got before us. So you can see the blue squares are the 4 employment units. So the 2 larger ones are where the application was refused before, and then the 2 smaller ones between the site and the service area, and they're for the aimed at providing the wider range of jobs. You can see the housing to the south, where a lot of the objectors live. And this plan superimposes what was refused before. The red square that you can see, the red rectangle you can see there, that's the footprint of the building that you refused last time. So you can see how it relates to the other 2 that are proposed now, and you can see that the footprint's slightly smaller, and it's generally further away than the one was last time, as well as being the 3.5 metres smaller that I sort of referred to. This is sort of a cross section through the buildings, and the red that you can see in the background and the light grey, that's the sort of the image of the previous application that was refused, and the smaller buildings to the front of that are the ones that you're now considering. So you see 2 things: they're smaller, but also they're far more interesting. They're not just a big box like the last application. They've got a bit of variety and a bit of interest to them. This is just one of the units. You see that they're they've got different colouring on them, curved roofs, windows and things. So it's not just a sort of a big box. This is a cross section through the site, which shows on the right hand side you've got the houses that I just showed you where the gable ends are, and on the left hand side of this you've got the biggest building, the closest building. It's about 60 metres between the 2. And what you'll see is there's a bund about halfway between the 2 that's proposed, which is going to be landscapes as well. I mean, it'll have a mixture of evergreen species and deciduous species. And you can see there's lines from the windows in the house, and you can see that you will be able to see the top of the building, but that top will be 3.5 metres lower than the one was last time. And my professional opinion is that that's overcome the dominating effect and the effect on residential amenity that we had last time. These are just various sort of viewpoints that the applicants looked at the application from in the different directions to show that he's sort of considered it in the context of the surroundings. I'll just get back to the site plan again. Okay, so I mean, my overall conclusion is that the two units on the left-hand side of the sites do provide the possibility of the wider range of jobs that you were concerned about last time. And I think you can see the footprint of the building there on the right-hand side compared to the other one. The fact that it's 3.5 metres smaller, I think that's overcome the second reason for refusal. So my overall advice is that it's recommended for approval, subject to the conditions in the report. There is still a holding objection from Highways England. It doesn't mean there's a highway objection to the application, such that they don't have any problem with it, and nor do the County Highway Authority. It's just the fact that the Department for Transport has to be involved, because this involves an access to a service area, and normally they don't allow the users to use an access to a service facility unless there's an exceptional reason. With the last application, they did accept there was a reason, so that they withdrew their comments. We're anticipating the same will happen this time because the traffic levels are roughly the same as they were with the last application, but they haven't done that yet. So the advice is subject to that happening in the next 3 months. The application be approved. Thank you. So I'll stop sharing my screen now. Okay.
Sorry, is that it, Wayne?
Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Yeah, you haven't got any comments on the update sheet, have you?
But there are a few things on the update sheet. I mean, really,
Yeah, but you haven't got any comments on them.
No, nothing really new has been raised that isn't in the report already.
Okay. Then we'll move on to the speakers that we have tonight. There are two. The first one is Councillor Helen Howell. Are you there, Helen?
I am indeed, Chair.
Jolly good. How nice to hear your voice again. So you probably know and realise you've got 3 minutes and not a second more. And Helen is on Raunds Town Council. And she's going to start speaking now.
Members, as a former member of this planning committee, I fully understand the responsibility you have in determining applications in relation to planning policy, but I also know that sometimes we need to rely on our local knowledge and the fact that we are also here to represent the residents. You will have read the report of the planning consultant appointed by Raunds Town Council and the numerous valid objections he raises. The original 2011 application was for 15 business units providing employment and opportunities for local people. This application does not meet that criteria. Raunds has had his fair share of warehouses, and the size and scale of this development with the accumulative impact of Wolf Park will make Raunds look like an industrial site. Let's not forget that it was ENC's planning policies that insisted housing development should include employment opportunities. This has turned out to be a total disaster, and developers have used every opportunity to either remove the need for employment by using the viability excuse or take it to the extreme degree, as in this case, and go for maximum impact. When outline applications are approved, members are shown wonderful pictures of what those developments will look like, and this bears no resemblance at all to what was approved. And let's not forget, the residents of Border Park were sold their homes on the plans. Small industrial units not working 24 hours. This application is bringing forth a proposal for 23,939 square metres overall, when the outline application was approved for 1,890 square metres in total. This application offers only a token single smaller business unit to overcome the requirement, but is on additional land not approved in the Raunds Neighbourhood Plan. An application was refused by members in 2017 where the buildings were going to be 21,135 square metres, but here we are again, not reducing the overall square footage but increasing it. The proposal, by virtue of its scale and location, would result in unacceptable landscape and visual impact and would be detrimental to residential amenity, and it is too close to residents to allow for an acceptable level of nighttime operation. JCS Policy 8E, Raunds NP Policy R13, Raunds NP Policy 14, A, B, C, D, E and F, JCS Policy 24, A and E. All these policies can be used to reject this application. May I remind members of a decision to reject an application for a warehouse on the 10th of September at Rushden Gateway. Then that was made following concerns from members regarding the potential impact on neighbouring residential amenity. Members, I ask you to reject this application on the many grounds that you have in front of you. Protect our residents and stop Raunds from becoming nothing more than an industrial warehousing site. Thank you.
Thank you, Helen. Right, the second speaker is John Bowles, who is the agent. Are you there, John? John, speak to me. There we go. Right, your turn, 3 minutes.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Start speaking.
Good evening, councillors. My name is John Bowles of Savills and I speak for the applicant. Thank you for this opportunity. I confine my comments to three particular matters. The first is use. Although many comments have focused on the possible B8 use of these four proposed buildings, it's by no means certain warehousing and distribution will be the predominant use. The buildings have been designed for the full flexibility of B1C, B2, B8 uses, consistent with the allocation of the main part of the application site. There are no named occupiers yet, although the greatest interest so far has in fact been from non-B8 occupiers. Nevertheless, and quite properly, the technical assessments, for example, of traffic, parking demand, noise and other impacts, have looked at the full spectrum of these possible uses so that each impact has been fully tested in the worst case scenario and shown to be acceptable. My second point is on the relationship with Border Park. I know it's of little comfort to the residents, but it is relevant to note that the layout of the houses in Border Park was planned with a neighbouring employment use in mind. Comparison of this scheme with the previous refused application and even the original 2012 outline planning permission shows that the position and the mass of the buildings will be further away and have less impact on the outlook of Border Park residents. Whilst I note some residents would have been content with the original employment scheme approved in 2012, if that scheme could have been delivered before now, it would have been. This scheme, by contrast, is deliverable. It will meet current requirements for employment space, and it will deliver 350 to 450 local jobs, accessible not only by car, but also by walking, cycling, and bus options, which can avoid the A45. My third point is on the access spine road. Access to each building off the spine road has been designed to ensure that there will be no need for stopping or parking on the main spine road. Use of this road immediately from the A45 roundabout will be covered by a management regime preventing parking and waiting along it and removing the existing obstructions outside the service area entrances. The applicant commits to this. The agreement secured with BP will also facilitate improvement of their utilities and services. I recognise the concern that vehicles using and idling on this spine road will cause disturbance to residents. The proposed management controls under proposed condition 27 will prevent this, and the acoustic fence and bunding will provide an effective barrier from day one, which will further increase in effectiveness as the planting grows. I respectfully ask you please to accept the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Right, those are the speakers. We now move to the ward member to give his comments upon the application, and that's Councillor Peter Watson. Shoot.
Thank you very much, Chairman. And yes, it was interesting listening to the two speakers, obviously reflecting two opposing points of view on this matter. I noticed that the last speaker mentioned that it might not necessarily be B8 use, but we have to take this application as it stands, and that does include B8 use 24/7. So I'm not doubting the gentleman's word or intentions, but we have to take the application as seen. The previous application was refused, as we all know, and on the grounds that we all know. And we really have to ask ourselves, is this application any different? It was refused previously because it didn't provide small business units and on the impact on the residents. Okay, at the moment we have got the very large P8 in the original application reduced to 2, but is it really 2? Visually, is it going to be 2? The gap between them is so small that I suspect visually it won't. And I think even the JPU, excuse me, in their comment 16.16 to query that particular issue. With regard to smaller units, which is a requirement, one of those I would certainly say, yes, okay, that is a smaller unit. But the other one, I would struggle to wonder whether that is a smaller unit, and colleagues will form their own opinion on that. I don't know, somebody will correct me on my maths, but given the square footage, does that not equate to something 60 by 60 meters? That sort of size. I would perhaps struggle to call that small. The outline planning permission that's been mentioned both by the first speaker and by the residents definitely was for smaller units. So we have to question whether this even meets that. Is it an improvement on the previous one that we refused? I think it's marginal, and members will consider which side of that margin they come down on. In terms of the residents, again, I still have concerns. I accept the gable end point that Wayne made, but we are talking about buildings that are only 55 metres away from that road, and we are talking about HGVs coming in 24/7. That's the potential, that's what we have to consider it on. There was some discussion in the report about numbers of vehicles that might move, but they're very subjective and I'm not sure they're very accurate. I noticed the police in their report require a barrier to the site. I'm not quite sure whereabouts the barrier is, so I don't think it really shows that on the plan. But nevertheless, a barrier means vehicles, HGVs coming in, stopping, and then moving off again, moving off through low gears, which creates even more noise. So I do have concern about that. The first speaker mentioned a previous application, I think it was in Rushden, that had got refused because of the impact on residents. So could this not be the same situation we have here? In terms of the access road itself, we've been told that it'll be a managed, it is a private road, so it'll be managed. Okay, we're told that, and we all have our opinion of how well that might happen in the future. Double yellow lines were mentioned, but even then recognised as being unenforceable. I think the site has the potential for employment. I think that's quite clear, and it's accepted in the Raunds neighbourhood plan. I just have concerns that this application is the right one for this site. I think I'll stop there, Chairman, and ask my colleagues for their thoughts and comments.
Okay, thank you, Peter. Right, I haven't got any hands up. Who wishes to speak? Dudley, I can see you. Crack on. Unmute yourself, Dudley. Dudley.
Yeah.
That's it.
I'm very disappointed this has come back to us, because it's how many times do we have to say no? I think the Irish Prime Minister said before no is the right answer. On the diagrams we saw earlier, the actual big red line, which was meant to be the former application, was only marginally changed by the new application. You know, there's just a metre or two off it, but actually it's still a great big block of shed 18 metres high. The fact that there's a tiny gap between the two, so technically it's two sheds, which who knows, if one occupant had both, they'd probably put a passageway between the two, is really nominal. It's a great big block of sheds, 18 metres high, and the diagrams showing the visual thing had a tree growing. It's going to take 30 years before a tree gets that high. When the buildings are built, the people will be looking out over a great big block of sheds. And I feel if for this application to be accepted, we, and I mean we, East Northants Council, has really let down the people who bought those houses, because they bought those houses on the understanding there were going to be some small buildings providing proper jobs. And what are we going to get? A shed, which is very likely, and these numbers of these employees is because it's calculated off the official thing, but we all know the big sheds employ very few people. They tend to be, if it's something like Hotpoint, it tends to have a few people driving around on forklift trucks and a chap at the gate. They don't have anything like that number of employees, and it's not often very quality employment. Whereas if we'd had some small units, like as was promised and like the residents there expected to be, they might have provided some much better jobs that the local people could use. And as to the local people, there's an enormous number of car parking spaces. You're not really expecting local people to use it. And there's 47, I read, lorry spaces. 47, that could be 94 lorry movements a day, presuming they come in and go out. And when they come in, they won't all be able to get in at once. So they'll be queuing up, and in the winter time, they'll be queuing up with the heaters on and the engines going flat out because lorry drivers don't get, someone told them to turn the lorry off and sit in the cold. That doesn't happen. The lorry drivers sit there with their fumes and all the rest of it while they're waiting to come in. So what we're giving the poor people who live up there is a situation where they'll be destroyed by noise all night if it's 24 operation, by the pollution all night, with the lorries coming in and going out, because they can't all get in 12 hours, 47 in and 47 out. It's going to be coming in and going out all the time, just because they couldn't be handled that much. I know you can physically move the lorries, but they won't be able to handle the stuff that much. And then the course, although the light pollution says, oh, the lights will all turn down, but they'll have to be pretty high lights for get a big Arctic lorry in there, won't they? So they'll all turn down, but the lights will have to be the height of the gable of these buildings, even if it's facing downwards. So the folks who go to bed at night will have, even if their window doesn't directly face the buildings, will be totally destroyed by the bright lights all night. And then we have the question of setting. Now we know setting is an important issue because it was East Northamptonshire, when we were talking about new build, that actually got setting as a official kind of reason for refusal. And it's going to be, the setting is going to be that Raunds is going to be dominated by an 18-metre high shed. So when you come down the A45 or up towards Raunds, what will you see? Not a nice field and so on for the setting of Raunds with houses and the church spire, which of course you won't see the church spire anymore. That will have disappeared behind the shed. Instead of that, you'll see a shed. And it's really, whatever way you look at it, they're sheds. I think it's nonsense to talk about, you know, whatever they think they're going to be used for. You tell me a building 18 metres high that isn't used for a shed. You don't build buildings that high unless that's what you intend to use them for storage and all the rest of it. So on the grounds that really the very same grounds we had before, that A, it's going to spoil the setting of Raunds, spoil the church tower, spoil the whole way of looking at Raunds. B, the fact that actually it's only nominally different to what we had before that's been turned down, because really you've got a dirty great big shed with a token bit of employment over in the corner, and another shed which we've already heard from the council introducing this, Councillor Wathen, is really another mini shed. So instead of getting one big shed, we've now got two sheds almost as big as the big shed, and we've got a mini shed and a token bit over in the corner, taking up the last bit of green space up there to kind of, which might have mitigated a bit, and in order to pretend that we're actually offering this kind of a small workshop space. So we're not actually providing the jobs properly, the kind of space, the thing that was in the original application. We're destroying the setting, and the pollution and the light pollution and the smoke pollution from lorries and the noise pollution from lorries on a 24-hour setting is totally unacceptable. And in fact, in the paperwork we've read, and I must admit there's gone to an enormous amount of paperwork to do this, to justify this thing. It seems to me an awful lot of work's gone in to justify it. The paperwork itself says about it should not, the noise of trucks and so on going into near residential areas should not be and have an adverse effect on the residential areas. Well, these most certainly will have an adverse effect on the residential areas. So I think this is totally unacceptable. I'm very sorry this has come back again, but obviously the developers will keep bashing away until they get something. But it's very unacceptable, and I think I'm very surprised that actually the recommendation is approval, because I think undoubtedly the recommendation should be refusal.
Thank you, Dudley. Wayne, can you answer some of the questions when we've had the debate? Can you come in at the end and give the answers for anything or comments that you may have?
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, I'll wait.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
The next one on the list in the chat room is Councillor Lee Wilkes.
Thank you, Chairman. Actually, I'll wait to listen to what other members have got to say before I come back with my main points. But can I ask for just a point of clarification on this, because I'm slightly confused. Is it possible that Wayne brings back up the presentation, because I got lost somewhere, and I'd like to see the presentation at the very beginning where we saw the red boxes showing what the previous application was, because I couldn't quite work it out, and I wonder if you could give me a steer on it.
So if I think the spire comes up, you won't see that anymore.
The buildings are 14.75 metres, just to clarify. That's the height of these new ones. So it is a reduction, but how significant a reduction?
It was the red boxes specifically that I just couldn't. They didn't seem to match. There were two separate ones that.
Are you getting there, Wayne? You're muted.
How can it say it's 18 metres?
I'll try it again. Hang on just about a second.
The previous one were 18, I think, Debbie.
Yeah.
Has that appeared on the screen now?
Yeah,
it
that's
has.
one of the photographs.
Yeah.
So Wayne, you had an image. It had 4 elevations on it with sort of red outlines in the.
That's it. Go to the end. Hang
the
on.
next slide, I think.
Is this the one you're looking at?
The next slide, Wayne.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so Wayne, I'm getting slightly confused here. So if I look at the second elevation down, the part that's sort of greyed out, washed out in the foreground is the new application. So, and the big red blob in the background is the 2017 application that was refused.
Yeah, that's correct. Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So Wayne, this is where I'm getting confused. So if I look at that red background, that the 27 application, it's clear to me from the perspective that this has been drawn that the 2017 application was taller because the red is taller than the greyed out, the washed out bit in the foreground. It is wider to the left hand side, to the east, because I can see the red on the left hand side. It's significantly wider on the right because I can see a significant band of red on the right. So it's wider on the east, it's wider on the west, and it's significantly taller. And actually, if I look at the elevation at the bottom, the fourth sort of image down, it's slightly easier to see how much wider it is to the left and to the right and the height. So if you'll just go back to the previous slide for me, please, where you're showing the red box. Yeah. That red box doesn't reflect the images that we've just looked at because it clearly doesn't show the height. We're looking at a plan now, not an elevation. It shows that the building, the red block, if you like, the 2017 application, is indeed further to the west because I can see it overhangs, but it's shorter. It's not as wide on the east elevation. So actually, if we were to move that red block along, it's probably about the same width as the 2017 application. But on the first slides that you showed us, the 4 elevations, it didn't look like that. It looked significantly wider, left and right.
Yes.
I would hazard a guess, Wayne, that both of those can't be right. There's been a fairly fundamental mistake made. If you'll just go to the next slide, on whoever has done the elevations. If you just go to the next slide there, Wayne. Whoever has put, sorry, go back one now. Whoever has put those together, which were printed in beautiful A3 full colour copies in my pack, I would suggest that whoever has made those has made a fairly significant error in making this new application seem like it's significantly smaller on elevation, whereas it actually isn't. Can you just clarify for me, please?
Yeah, I mean, these are not plans that we prepared. They're plans from the actual application.
Wayne, sorry, just to butt in. I wasn't for a second saying it was you that had made the mistake. I can accept it potentially the applicant. I just want clarification. It is a mistake.
It is a mistake. I mean, I think what this one you're looking at the moment shows accurately the footprint of the two, the two applications together. So I think the other one is more of an illustration that it's a smaller. I think you're right. It isn't correct in terms of its width, but in terms of the difference in height, I think it's correct. Okay, so I think that's all really we can take from that. It's 3.5 metres lower.
Wayne, sorry, apologies, Chairman. I just want to clarify that it's important. So what we're really saying is that the previous slide there, where we see the red rectangle, that's correct, because it shows that the new on plan, the width of the new application is about as wide as the 2017 application.
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay, and then if we go to the next slide, just for clarification, just so that members and everybody is aware, this here, which played a significant part of our packs, and it was nice, and we should ignore this because this is horrifically misleading. So
in terms of width, yes, in terms of height, I'd say take it as right for the height, but you're right, in terms of width, it's not correct. No.
It has been drawn to portray the new application as being significantly smaller width-wise, and it isn't smaller. So that's why I'm just trying to clarify that.
Yeah, I'd say that's Chairman.
Yeah, Thank you very much. I'll come back later with my things. I just want to see what members say. I just want to.
Councillor, thank you. The next speaker should be Councillor Jill Mercer.
Thank you very much, Chair. I have a number of sort of questions, clarification points, etc. Before I move on, if in the instance that this was approved, we normally have, when it's a high building next to a residential area, a condition. We go bang on about this every single time we have one. It's never put in there. We have to ask for it specially. That is TV interference. If there is TV interference, that the applicant will be responsible for making that good. Is that possible to put it in? Could I just ask that first, Wayne?
Wayne, do you want to take that one now?
Yeah, I mean, it is possible to put it in. I mean, we didn't, with the last application, we recommended approval as well. We didn't put it in that time, so I haven't put it in this time for that reason, but I'm aware of the schemes that have got it, so yeah, there's no problem with that now.
Thank you.
Thank you, Wayne.
Well, I have another number of questions. So, first of all, air quality. On page 18, it's mentioned in one of the paragraphs, I'm not sure who made this assessment, but it said that in the potential development impacts, it was large due to the number of potential HGV movements. It also says that it's been calculated that some money should be paid because of that impact. But it's also said, but they don't know what to spend the money on, so it probably won't be asked for. Now, the fact that it's actually been said that there's such an impact that money should be paid, which is quite a big ask, and it's quite a lot of money, 616,954. It suggests to me that air quality is a problem. Now, I don't know if anyone's seen it, but I think it was yesterday or the day before, there was a young girl that died, and they actually agreed that she could put on the death certificate that she died from the impact of pollution from vehicles. So it is a real problem these days. So I'll just throw that out there as a problem. I would like to know what the gap is between the two large buildings, because it looks very close and I can't tell, I haven't seen anywhere what the gap is. the JPU described the massing as major to moderate impact on visual impact. It does look as well, looking at that, it's very kind of Councillor Wilkes bringing that up, a couple more times. The red block, the one that we're told is accurate. Actually, as he said, if you move it across a little bit so that, say it was, trying to move it so they're in line, it's very wide. It's actually wider than I think the previous one, because they've turned one end on to make it a little bit narrower, but they've used a bigger area. So it's not a lot difference, and it's got this very tiny gap in the middle. So regardless of how big that gap is, it really looks quite a mass. The other thing is that it's 24-hour. That concerns me greatly. Now on page 35, there's a bit about noise, and it said various planning conditions to ensure noise is properly controlled. And on one of them it says that the development should not exceed 60, whatever it is, at the facade of the newest residential property on more than 15 occasions. Who on earth is going to police that? Is someone going to stand there every night and work out if they've done it 15 times? That just sounds like a nonsense. I can't see how you can possibly police that. Also, I don't think I mentioned the noise barrier, and I wasn't sure where that noise barrier was to go. Perhaps you can come back to that in a minute. But there was some dispute about whether it should be 3 metres or 4 metres. So perhaps Wayne could explain that, because I didn't. It kept going backwards and forwards, and I couldn't quite work out in the end. They said that they didn't want to put the 4 metre, but I wasn't sure on what basis and whether we should take that into account. The police have apparently said, I didn't actually spot that, but somebody just said about having a gate there. Now, I'm not sure where that gate was, but if it is a gate in, let's say, from McDonald's, where we stood when we went on the site visit at that time, then my concern is that vehicles coming there and wanting to get in are going to be backing up. The other thing is with that road is that it's an unadopted road, and yet they've said they might put yellow lines there, but the police have said that's unenforceable. So I'm not sure even if they could have permission to install the yellow lines, because they don't own the road. They may have an arrangement with BP or something like that, but perhaps Wayne could come back about that. But altogether, there are quite a lot of things that are of a concern. The other thing is that the road is next to the houses, and if you've got 24-hour and you've got lorries, cars, 244 parking spaces. Now it's actually less than they're supposed to be, but even then, 244 cars are going to be coming and going in there, and the lorries. So that's a huge amount of traffic, and if it's 24 hours, and you imagine the houses, even though they're gable end, they're still going to have a significant amount of noise, and that's why I come back to the noise problem. But perhaps Wayne could come back at some point and clarify some of those issues.
You've got a note of those questions, Wayne?
Yes, I have, yes.
Yeah, can you come back at the end of the debate? So I've got several people waiting their hands. Councillor Pentland is next on the chat list, and then Councillor Mercer. Andy.
Thank you, Chair. The first point I wanted to bring up is one that Councillor Mercer just alluded to. If we forget the potential overbearing impact of the industrial units, you look at how close the road is to the houses, and I just think that, does that not constitute an overbearing impact on local residents with all the cars going past? And the second bit refers back to one of the previous reasons for refusing the previous application, which came down to not providing smaller employment space. Now, clearly there is amends to this with the slightly smaller employment space, but if you look at the neighbourhood development plan, the smaller space is not within the neighbourhood development plan allocated land. So that to me, you appease one policy to then go against another. And it makes me wonder why we have neighbourhood development plans when we keep going against them in ways like this. Those are the main points from me.
Thank you, Harriet. Councillor Andy Mercer.
Thank you, Chair. I've got a number of points I want to make. The first one is that there seems to be a culture of trying to get rid of employment land allocation as soon as possible. It seems to be a badge of honour that you've managed to use it up, when in fact we should treat it as something precious to create jobs, not something to be got rid of as quickly as possible. Right, the second point is that whatever the applicant's agent said, it's almost unimaginable that these B8 warehouses could be used for anything other than B8. The lorry parking, the staff parking, the utilities, etc., are just completely incompatible with any other use. So to suggest that some other use might be made for it, well, they'd have to bring back a fresh planning application because it'd be sufficiently different. Right, next, the acoustic fence that's been mentioned. I've not been able to work out which side of the bund that acoustic fence is going to be, and I'd be interested to see calculations about how different the impact of a 4 versus 3 metre fence is. The further apart the fence is from the bund, the greater the difference in the impact between a 3 or 4 metre fence. So that is a very significant issue. All right, next, turning circle. On the extreme right of the plan, on the end of the road, right in the corner down there, right in the corner at the end, there is a funny notch on the road, which I think is some sort of turning circle for lorries that have gone down the access road for the I think it's unit 400. Yeah, unit 400, and then realise they've gone the wrong way and have got to turn round. Well, it looked to me that if you have a large Artic, let alone a lorry with one of those second lorries on a behind it as a trailer, so you get effectively 2 Artics chained together, which is coming increasingly common, he won't be able to turn round in that turning circle. If you've got one of those double lorries, it won't be possible to turn round. He'd then have to try and reverse his way out, and that's a long way to reverse and very hard to contemplate. So if we're going to have that as a turning circle, it's the wrong size for that type of lorry. Right, next, there was a comparison to the Gateway site in Rushden. I think that's an invalid comparison, because with the Gateway site we had lorries from the B8 going through the residential area. We've managed to fix that with this one. That was 2 applications ago when it was going through the residential area, so that is not a relevant issue. The big killer, and I meant that literally, with the Gateway site was that potentially lorries would have to reverse across a zebra crossing, which was about as big a no-no as you can imagine. So although there's lots of problems with this application, comparison to the Gateway site isn't one of the possibilities. One of the final points I'd make that hasn't been raised by other people, but I suspect was at the back of their mind, is that this unadopted road is going to have very heavy HGVs going over it. The damage done to a road is proportional to the force power of the axle weight. Therefore, this road is going to suffer significant damage regularly. We need to have some sort of clarity about how it's going to be maintained, or else it's going to break up and you're going to have dust, etc., and problems around there. So there needs to be some clarity about what the maintenance responsibilities are, and a guarantee that it will be maintained to an adequate standard. Those are my initial thoughts, Chairman. Thank you
very much. Anyone else wish to speak before we go to the officer? Dudley again. Sorry, you're muted. Dudley.
Muted like you should say.
There you go.
You imagine the morning shift. So there's 244 car parking spaces. So let's say a few are sick. So that could be 100 cars coming in and 100 cars going out. At the same time, there are 47 lorry spaces. So let's say there are 20 odd Arctic lorries trying to enter this unmade up, because it isn't made up very well, unadopted road. But of course, there's also McDonald's on that road. So there'll be people going to McDonald's on the same road, and there'll be people leaving the garage on the same road. So you've got 100 cars coming in, 100 cars going out, 20, shall we say, let's be kind and say only half the lorries, 20 odd lorries, big lorries, Arctics, coming in and going out. And then you've got all the people going to McDonald's, you've got the people leaving the BP garage. It's just impossible. It's just absurd, really. So what you're going to, the real danger is they'll back up and they'll be on the roundabout, backed up round the roundabout. And that, of course, is where the road transport people are concerned. Because what the last thing we want is, we only get about six around that bit where between the garage and McDonald's. So if they're all going, and McDonald's is quite full, and then you've got the children, of course, you go up to McDonald's at the evenings. There's no proper provision for them. There's no proper crossing or any other way to get into it. They don't expect to have 100 cars going in and out and big lorries going in and out. I think the thing is totally unacceptable on a safety point of view, on a transport point of view, and of course the fact of the matter, the people who live there, it's going to make life impossible, because those lorries, if they're backed up, they're all going to have the engines running, the diesel fumes coming out.
Thank you, Dudley. I think we've got your points. Can we go back to Councillor Lee Wilkes, please?
I'd like.
Thank you, Chairman. And thanks everybody for being so comprehensive on this. Now, Chairman, if you can just bear with me here. I've been making notes as the application's been presented this evening, but as a number of you are aware, I'm on holiday at the moment, so I'm not at my usual desk. So, Chairman, having listened to all that we've been told so far this evening, and now understanding as we do that the red outline elevations, the pretty A3 drawings that we all received should be ignored because they are so misleading. I'm struggling to find any reasons to grant this application, but there seem to be plenty of reasons not to. In fact, it seems to me, Chairman, there are so many reasons not to grant this particular application. It really is a surprise to me that this application was worthy of this short notice additional committee meeting that we're at. Now, I wasn't part of this committee in 2017 when the last application on this site was heard, but I'm not surprised that you all, or certainly those members that were around in 2017, that you refused the application for what was a 200,000 square foot shed, especially as the original application back in 2011 was for small business units that were only a tenth of that size. And of course, that is an application that local residents support. They are the kind of business units that local residents thought would be their neighbours when they bought their houses. But today we've got a proposal here for a development that will be over 250,000 square feet, 250,000 square feet, and which by the officer's own admission actually will be impossible to hide. This application, of course, does now include some smaller units, as Councillor Pentland and others have mentioned, but those smaller units are on greenfield. They are on land that hasn't been allocated for development, and the B8s, the huge B8s that we can't hide, still make up nearly 80% of the development. In fact, potentially even more than 80%, depending on how you look at the two extra units. Now, of course, a committee meeting that I was part of was a couple of months ago when we heard the application for Rushden Gateway, and with that application, I was pleased to add my vote to what I think, Chairman, was probably a unanimous vote to refuse the application, due in part, and I accept what Councillor Andy Mercer said earlier, but it was due in part to the fact that the proposed B8s, or more specifically the HGV movements that come with those B8s, were only around 50 metres away from neighbouring residents. Well, the application that we have in front of us today would have 24-hour HGV movements, but these are only going to be about 25 metres away from local residents. We've got to ignore the fact that this building, this new application, is 55 metres away from houses. It's the HGVs that are going to be making the noise, and they are only 25 metres or so away from local residents. So half the distance that we had at the Rushden Gateway. And actually, more importantly, they're only about 10 metres, 10 or 15 metres, according to the plans, away from the nearest children's play area. And during winter months, of course, those queuing HGVs are going to be sat there with their engines running, regardless of what anybody says. Those HGV drivers are going to be sat there trying to keep warm. And that's going to be 25 metres away from a child's bedroom window, 10 metres away from where they could be playing. That's shorter than the length of my garden. We're going to have HGVs sat idling with the engines running. And on top of that, we're going to be creating a busy fifth spur onto the BP roundabout along an unadopted road, which is already an insane road for anybody that uses it. And of course, I note that even highways are uncomfortable with that on the update sheet that we received. And presumably that's going to get even worse if we get the dualling of the A45 that we've all been promised. So it would seem to me that we're lucky, actually, that to help us tonight, should fellow members decide to refuse this application, we've got numerous sound policy reasons to support us. Firstly, by virtue of its size and location, the proposal would be detrimental to neighbouring residents, and it's therefore contrary to the North Northants Joint Core Strategy Policy 24E, and I think it's 8E. Like I say, I'm in a hotel trying to write this down. Secondly, due to the unacceptable landscape and visual impacts, it's contrary to the adopted Raunds Neighbourhood Plan Policy 14. And thirdly, due to the limited provision for small enterprise units. And remember, the original 2011 application that affected homeowners bought their homes based on was entirely small enterprise, low units. And with that, I'm comfortable that the application probably also breaches the Joint Core Strategy Policy 24A. But as I said at the start of this, my overriding feeling, Chairman, for wanting to refuse this application based on everything we've heard this evening isn't just because it doesn't conform to our own policies. It's to protect the hundreds of families who invested in Raunds by purchasing homes that they were told would be adjacent to small enterprise units that they welcomed, not next to an enormous development of 50-foot high warehouses covering over 250,000 square feet that the officers accept can't be hidden. So in summing up, really, Chairman, to repeat, I was happy and I was confident in refusing the Rushden Gateway application a couple of months ago. It was absolutely the right thing to do. And this application, in my eyes, is even worse. And I will be equally happy and confident to vote to refuse this evening.
Thank you, Lee. Patricia, did you have a comment to make? I thought you had your hand up.
Chairman, I think I heard Councillor Jones wanting to come in at one point.
Thanks very much indeed.
Yes, yes, you can. But hang on a second. I've asked Patricia if she wants to speak. Can we just cover that first? You're muted, Patricia. You're muted.
Chairman, I don't think you've done any instructions. So
I didn't have my hand up, Chair.
Didn't you wave at me?
No.
You're just waving at me. Okay, you've got nothing to say. Gotcha. Sorry, who else wants to speak?
Councillor Jones.
Lance Jones.
Councillor Jones. Lance, come on then.
Residents of Border Park bought their houses in expectation of small business neighbours. And as the people's representatives, we must ensure that planning, our committee, does not let these people down. We're responsible to these people. They've bought their houses in good faith and we cannot turn our backs on them now. The access to this site, its impact on the A45 junction, represents a significant nuisance, not only to the people of Border Park, but also to the people of Raunds, going about their business, leaving to go to work and returning at the end of the day. This application is nothing but a slap in the face for the people of Raunds, and fundamentally, according to democratic principles, We must act to protect the people who send us here. Thank you.
Thank you, Lance. Anyone else? Are we all done? Then
Chair?
I'll go.
I have got my hand up now.
Yes, I can see you, Patricia. Go on then.
Just to help members, the role of the committee and members in decision making is to determine an application in accordance with the plan unless material considerations indicate otherwise. I just want to make that point in view of the last comments by the councillor, where the members are there for another reason. Whilst residents' comments are material, as long as they're planning comments, that's acceptable. But the role of the committee is to determine in accordance with the plan, unless material considerations indicate otherwise. Just to make that clear. I wouldn't
Okay, thank you, Patricia.
wouldn't want anything immaterial being taken into account for a decision.
Gotcha. Wayne,
Okay.
would you like to answer some of the questions that have been posed?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I've made a note of a few things. The first thing was to do with the air quality. There's a mention of some figures in the committee report, when a large figure of 600 odd thousand and then a lower figure of 23,000. Just wanted to clarify, this application falls into the category where it's £23,000 that they think is the justified amount for air quality. So it isn't as high as made out. I've asked the County Highway Authority and Highways England if they've got anything they could spend that money on to improve air quality in the surroundings. And both of them have said they haven't got anything, no schemes that they could spend 23,000 on. So what's happened is the applicant has concentrated on things on the site, electric charging points and things like that, and extra landscaping. That's what the sort of equivalent to the £23,000 is, rather than spending it on the roads nearby. The point about the noise barrier, it's going to be between the bund and the the road and the unit, so it's the opposite side of the bund. And there's been lots of talk about 3 or 4 metres tall. I've been asking for 4 metres throughout the application, but I think the conclusion is that because it's on the other side of the bund, 3 or 4 metres doesn't make a lot of difference. So that's why it's 3 metres tall. About the barriers, lots of reference to crime prevention officer and the barriers. The barriers are going to be at the entrances to each of the units. There's no barrier on the actual access road at all. It's just the links off of it into the 4 units will have a barrier. So there won't be anything near McDonald's or the petrol station or anything like that. The point about if the noise is exceeded on 15 or more occasions, that's sort of like the normal way that environmental health work. If there's a problem, they send somebody out to record, or they give the recording machinery to people. And if they record it on more than 15 occasions, that's in breach of what's required. The site for this small unit is not allocated in the neighbourhood plan for business use, but it's not allocated in the neighbourhood plan for anything else. It's not protected as open space, and it's not, it isn't to be kept free from development. So to me, it's a natural. If the rest of it gets allowed, this is a natural infill site between the services, Raunstown Football Club, and the A45 to the north. And it's poor quality agricultural land. It won't be big enough to do anything, unless it's something like this, you see. So it'll just sit there as derelict land otherwise. The point that Councillor Mercer made about not being able to turn, I take his point about that. The turning circle that is there, yeah, it'll be for smaller vehicles only. If anyone's larger, what they'll have to do is carry on into the unit at the end, turn around and come out there. The roads, the condition of the road, yes, it's not known if it'll be adopted or non-adopted, but they're going to build it to an adoptable standard. So in theory, that should make it last longer. But I accept the point about the lorries and the deterioration and everything. There's got to be some sort of maintenance programme for it.
Well, no, you're going to put a condition in that the road become adopted?
No, we can't do that. No. Just it's built to adoptable standard. That's all.
So we don't know that it's going to be adopted?
No, we don't know, no.
Okay, thanks.
No. I think that's all the things I want to say, really, in response to the points.
Okay. Have you had your questions answered? I can't remember them all. Looks like you have. Jill?
Yes, on that last point, when you say the road will be built according to, I think we were probably most concerned about the part of the road that's there already, rather than the ones that are going to build to a doctoral standard, because it's the part between the roundabout and McDonald's basically that is going to have very heavy use. It's not only going to have the use into this site, but it's also got the use of the vehicles using it currently. So it's that part that we're worried about with the maintenance. Could you tell us about that, please?
Yeah, I mean, that everything at the moment, 10 metres from the roundabout is adopted, and everything beyond that is not. So this application is going to improve all of the road from the point 10 metres from the roundabout onwards. So I think that does include some land in front of the petrol station and the McDonald's to be improved all the way through.
Okay, Dudley, then Andy.
This does not address the issue of the sheer volume of vehicles. There are 244 car parking spaces. There must be 100 cars coming in for a shift and 100 cars going to go out, leaving not using the rest. And the lorries coming in at the same time, 47 parking places. The lorries going to coming in, and there's people walking across there, and the children have got to walk across that road. We walk up from Ringstead School because it's a walk to school route. They've got to cross that little bit there. I mean, it's just where are the lorries going to wait? If they can't, if all get in, all those cars and lorries can't get in simultaneously, where are they going to wait? And the answer is backing up onto the roundabout.
Thank you. Andy?
Thank you, Chairman. The issue of the small turning area, I think, needs to be revisited. Mr. Cattrall said that it's only for small vehicles. Larger ones would have to travel on and turn round inside the site and come back out again. That's not practical, because this will be a secure site, and the gatekeepers at the entrance, which you can see on the plan, will not allow someone in who's not authorised. They will simply tell them they've got to reverse back. So that isn't an option. So I would suggest that there is a significant problem with the road layout on this application, regardless of traffic levels or any of the other issues. The fact that that turning circle is too small in itself is a significant problem and would have to be addressed, because as it stands, it would in practice mean that HGVs would have to reverse the whole way back down that road, which isn't on. I think the Highways Authority have a maximum distance of about 50 metres that you can be required to reverse back down anything. I think it's about 50, and this will be significantly more than that. So it would be in breach of those aspects of the highways regulations. Admittedly, it's an unadopted road, but we are expected to enforce the same standards on the roads within estates, whether they're adopted or not. And I don't think this would meet that standard.
Thank you, Andy. Jill, did you want to speak again, or have you spoken? You're on the chat room.
I spoke just now, but
yes.
Yeah, I said the thing I wanted to say.
Fine, that's okay then. Anyone else wish to speak before we go to a vote, I suppose?
Chairman, it's Councillor Jones here again. I'd just like to sort of reinforce my point, having received the clarification from Patricia. And I'm referring to the Localism Act on the gov.uk site, confirming that the responsibilities were transferred to local government with new rights and powers for communities and individuals, which are reflected in our neighbourhood plan in Raunds. And it's those bases that we have to champion, the rights of residents within Raunds, to ensure that our adopted neighbourhood plan is reflected in the planning that comes forward. So this isn't a carte blanche to say we don't like something. This is based on the neighbourhood plan. So I hope that helps clarify the basis of my points.
Thank you, Lance. Anyone else before we go back to Peter for a proposal? We all finished? Thank you. Peter, so that's down to you to make a proposal, and if you are of a mind to refuse, we must have the refusal reasons as well. Okay, down to you.
Thank you very much, Chairman, and thank you very much to fellow councillors for a very comprehensive set of comments. I asked at the beginning that was this application sufficiently different to the previous one that was refused, and I still struggle to see that it is. We still only have, in my opinion, one smaller unit. The second one, I must admit, I would struggle to regard that as so. I still think we've got just the visual and general amenity impact on the residents. I noticed, as I said, the JPU at 6.16 even regard the visual impact as major to moderate. So I do think it would struggle to find justification for it. I notice also in the report that the noise assessment was based on 4-metre high acoustic fences. Well, these are in the report only 3 metres, so I think the assessment there the situation is going to be worse than the assessment we had there. So I would struggle to find a way to go along with the officer's recommendation. I would ask just one question of Wayne with regard to the access road.
Sure.
Okay, that is being approved up to adoptable standard, or was not adopted. But it talks also about a 3-metre wide pedestrian stroke cycle element there. Now, knowing that particular road, it is not very wide. It is, I suspect it meets about the minimum requirement for 2-way traffic. Where are they going to get the extra 3 metres for the path stroke cycleway? I wonder if Wayne could just give me some info on that.
Wayne, have you got an answer?
Yeah, I mean, there's going to be some widening on the. Just think if you're going out of the site, it'll be on the left-hand side, on the side where there's the Rawnstown, the side of the Rawnstown Football Club, if you see what I mean. There's scope to widen it on that side. But I think the reference to the 3 metres is, I think, to do with the link through into Border Park. There's going to be a 3-metre path through there to allow access to that estate as a site footpath cycleway.
Okay, thanks. But that couldn't continue, could it, down past McDonald's or the garage, because that's a curb and somebody else is behind it.
Yeah, there'll be some widening there on the left-hand side. I'm not convinced it can be 3 metres wide, though. No.
Okay, yeah, fine. Okay, Peter, that's your question answered.
Yes, it is indeed. Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Wayne. Yes, that sort of, yeah. Well, I'm afraid I've got to go with, I think, what seems to be the general tone of the evening. I did try to approach this in a state of mind to, go with the employment opportunities, but I just can't. I really feel that
what are you proposing?
I'll tell you in just a mo. I am proposing a refusal, and I would suggest that it is on amenity-based refusal, and I'm sure officers and other colleagues can help with the relevant wording on these. Both the visual and the noise aspect, I really feel 24-hour-a-day operation this close is just not right. So visual and noise and
traffic.
Well, yes, traffic in and out. I think, the traffic flows, as I think Councillor Councillor Hughes mentioned, the number of potential vehicle movements based on the car parking spaces is totally inappropriate for this particular site. Something on the original.
So is that one of your reasons for refusal?
I would suggest it could well be, and I will take advice on this.
Do you have any others?
If any of my colleagues would like to come in,
They're waiting in the. There's Mercer arms up everywhere. So
Oh,
you've got
sure.
your reasons there. So Andy first, then Jill.
Thank you, Chair. Even if it's not a reason for refusal, I think we need to put in an informative that the turning circle is inadequate for the proposed business use of this site. It would lead to excessive reversing by lorries outside the normally accepted standards for highways.
Okay, Jill.
Thank you, Chair. I was going to. I agree with the amenity that Councillor Otham mentioned, and noise, and the fact it's 24-hour use. But the air quality as well, I think, could be added.